Welcome back to CrimsonCast. Galen, Clavio, Scott Caulfield joining you. It is Saturday, September 13th, and Indiana's 3-0 on the football season. They obliterate the Indiana State Sycamores last night in Memorial Stadium by a score of 73-0. And Scott, that was we're getting used to seeing games like this. You had the Western Illinois game last year. You had the Nebraska game last year. You had the Purdue game, obviously, last year. This was the largest shutout victory since 1901 for IU football. That is quite a stat. That was actually right before we started the podcast, right? We
had talked to Alexander Graham Bell about how to put a podcast out.
That's right. You know, we're hanging out with him and Edison and be like, guys, what's the transmission policy?
Yep.
How do we make this happen? But it was a fun time. Great weather last night. Friday game. And, the nice thing, Scott, with these Friday games, I know a lot of people have problems with them, but it's great because we get a chance to talk to you folks even earlier as we recap the game, and you get the whole weekend to watch the rest of college football. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. We're going to talk about the game, and we'll obviously do a little bit of preview of what's going to be coming up this next week. Huge week for Indiana football. This completely sets the table for what's to come. But we want to talk a little bit about the performances and just the overall level of play that Indiana is exhibiting as they head into Big Ten play now with the non-conference season officially over. Before we do that, just a quick reminder, we are brought to you by Home Field Apparel, your place to go for the finest in collegiate fashion, softest fabrics, the coolest designs, and the tour continues unabated for Home Field Apparel. They will be in Bloomington this upcoming week, celebrating college football. They will have pop-up stores. They'll have all kinds of cool stuff going on. A lot of that will be centered around the new store on Kirkwood Avenue, Home Field at Tracks. So be sure to check all that out. We'll have some information about some items coming up a little bit later this week. So you want to be sure to follow us on the Substack. You also want to be sure to follow us on X if you're on there. And
Home Field has a pop-up in Memorial Stadium, or they did last week.
Yes, they've been all over the place, and they keep pushing out some really cool new products. Use the code HOME23, get 15% off your first online order. Again, homefieldapparel.com, proud sponsor of the Back Home Network. Also, just a reminder, folks, check us out on YouTube. And a quick apology for those of you who are football fans. If you tuned in to the Big Red Carpet with Rhett Lewis this past week, a lot of you saw that episode in the first couple of days, and it was a brilliant episode. Rhett did an amazing job of using all 22 footage to break down what Indiana was doing against Kennesaw State. We were openly questioning whether or not that was going to be a problem with the folks that own the copyright on the all 22 footage. And as it turns out, it was not. So the whole episode got taken down off of YouTube. So we apologize for that. This is the price we pay for strategic progress, I guess, with IU football, that clearly they find IU football dangerous because when you try to talk about how it works on a game-by-game or play-by-play basis, they take it off the internet. So
it's totally messed up. I mean, I'm going to have a rough time today because I had two thoughts on this podcast. I was going to, every drive I was going to link to a Metallica song that we'd play live on the podcast. Like, oh, they're going to take it down. So I was like, all right, I'll go back to the drawing board. What if I link it to a Disney movie? Every single Disney movie, we'll play clips from that. Like, no, we're definitely can't do copyright stuff. So Galen, really, you threw me for a loop, man. I got to come up with new ideas.
At one point, I thot the internet was free. I mean, what's happened to this country? Seriously. No. Anyway.
Our podcast will now be on LimeWire from here on out.
Yeah, the CrimsonCast brought to you by Kazaa, right?
Every third episode includes a malware.
It is fun. That hit a little too close to home, Scott. I got to be honest with you. It is funny because, Scott, you and I were both at IU when the Napster ban happened.
Yes.
And what was funny at the time, and it kind of points out, and I'm not here advocating copyright theft. It was an honest mistake on our part. But it is funny because they make this big deal about Metallica suing a bunch of universities, including Indiana, and Indiana goes through this whole thing where it's like, well, we're banning Napster. But of course, there was always Audio Galaxy, which worked exactly the same as Napster.
Or LimeWire.
LimeWire, I think, came slightly later, but like Audio Galaxy was the initial place to go. And, my favorite, and some of this is like a very particular band of Hoosiers, people that were on the IU's campus And yeah, I mean, if you were in the dorms, you had high-speed internet if you figured out how to make it work. Or if you were not in the dorms, you were in an apartment, but you could dial in to IU internet. And if you'll recall, there were two-hour servers where you would be on for 2 hours and they kick you off. And then there was an 8-hour server. And it's like, I wonder what the 8-hour server is being used for. And it's just like mass file transfer all over the place at that point. It's wild that we were just sitting around turning our computers on for multiple hours just to stream illegal music, to download, not even to stream, to download the illegal music.
Right.
And half the time it wasn't even like what was being described. That was when I hear people talk about the wild, wild west of the internet, it's like that was the actual wild, wild west. Like nobody knew what was going on, or, very few people were actually using their computers for like above board purposes.
And it wasn't even music. It was like movies and it was like software. I'd be like, and I would download like 8 versions of Photoshop. Like I know 3 of them are corrupt. Like one of them might work. It was
we're sure the statute of limitations is run out on all of this, right?
Yes.
You sure?
I hope so.
Did we check with the attorneys on no, anyway.
Talk to our lawyers, the Back Home Network, please.
Yeah, it's funny. Anyway, let's talk on Indiana State first and foremost. As the Hoosiers, when you came into this game, I mean, the spread was, I think, 48.5. Indiana had looked obviously very good against Kennesaw State, especially offensively, and you knew that this was going to be a game against an overmatched opponent. And Indiana State didn't have a quarterback coming into it, essentially, as they had suffered an injury. But you didn't really know exactly how dominant Indiana would necessarily be. And in this game, they exceeded every potential marker you might have for them in terms of their level of dominance. It's hard to even know where to begin. I guess you got to start with Fernando Mendoza, who puts up like literally video game numbers, like to the point where you would look at these numbers in a video game and you would say, that's not realistic. They need to tune down whatever they're doing in this. But, Fernando, 19 for 20, 270 yards, 5 touchdowns, a QBR of 93.8. And he was done at halftime. Like he did all that in a half. You get Alberto Mendoza, comes in 6 for 9, 104 yards, 2 touchdowns. First time in quite a while that 2 brothers played in the same game at quarterback and each threw multiple touchdown passes. Last week you had both throwing at least one. This one with multiple. You even get Grant Wilson coming in there. He's 1 for 1, the transfer from Old Dominion. You also got to throw on another game, Scott, with 300-plus yards in rushing. 3 straight games, 300-plus yards rushing to start this season. And that, I don't know if it's ever happened with IU. It may have. I have not dug that far back in the statistics. Omar Cooper Jr., 4 touchdowns, 10 catches, 207 yards. The defense was awesome. They end up with, 5 sacks and 16 tackles for loss. It was just one of those games where everything went Indiana's way. I think at halftime, like Indiana State had like -4 yards on offense. I forget what the exact number was. You get dominance, but we've seen FCS teams at least move the ball a little bit against FBS level teams. This was one of those next level type of wins where even against an FCS opponent, it was kind of shocking how dominant Indiana was over ISU.
And also the thing that we've been talking about week after week, Jonathan Brady was great on punt returns, had a 28-yard return, and a lot of the other ones was like a shoestring tackle away from breaking it, all while also getting 27 yards and 2 touchdowns as a receiver. No, it was unbelievable. So you mentioned the score. This is AI, so I did, ChatGPT hopefully is correct, but just seeing the number of games Indiana has scored over 70 points in history, and it came back with 5. This is the first time, I'm pretty sure, ever you've gone back-to-back seasons with Indiana scoring over 70. So last year they beat Western at only 77-3. This year they beat Indiana State 73-0. The only other times, so back-to-back seasons, that's something. Getting 70 points against anybody is unbelievable in football. The only other games I have, like the one you mentioned, Indiana versus Franklin in 1901. It shows Indiana versus DePaul 70-0 in 1903. Which AI lets me know is IU's largest margin versus DePaul, which is like No kidding. And then in 2013, Indiana beat Indiana State 73-35. But I mean, this is doing this back-to-back years. Indiana looked way more crisp. What I thought was interesting is you mentioned the rushing yards. It felt like watching those first couple drives, they were really working on the passing game. Like a lot of passing early, a lot of working on the pass. A lot of those rushes kind of came when the game was, officially over. Everything on the passing looked way more crisp. It looked like they were really running their routes. I mean, Omar Cooper Jr. was just open everywhere and breaking tackles. Mendoza was hitting him on dimes. And, this is where it's tough to say, is this just because they're this wide open because of who they're playing? But, they weren't playing unbelievably stiff competition the first 2 weeks either. And things looked a little bit out of kilter. Things definitely looked completely locked in now. And what I thought was interesting is outside the numbers and all this was just how different, fast, and dynamic the offense looked. Like the plays they were running a lot of RPO sets. Like it surprised me because this like you would almost think they would try to keep the same playbook they had the first 2 weeks and just wait for Illinois, but they didn't. Which is what I just found interesting is they showed their hand a little bit to be like, hey, we have a lot under the hood here. Because they could have just run a vanilla offense and still won this game probably 40-0, but they didn't. They came out and showed really a much different offense.
And there's a strategy behind that, obviously. Yeah. I mean, you don't really want to tip your hand the first week. They opened up the playbook a bit more in the second week because you want to give future opponents something to think about. Now they go into the upcoming year or the upcoming game, against Illinois. Illinois has got a ton to think about overall now with this game. They've got Omar Cooper all over the place. They've got Elijah Surratt all over the place. They've got EJ Williams as a viable receiver. They got Charlie Becker, who was getting a lot of play earlier
I'm just laughing, thinking of the old Tom Allen. It could have been which Mendoza do we worry about? Sorry.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it's nice because for a couple of reasons. One, you do give Illinois more to think about. Right. And I do think that becomes important, especially as you go into a week where Illinois is going to have to wait another day, essentially, to start doing the loadout for this game because they've still got to play today. But then you've also got the added bonus of sharpening what you're doing in terms of your own execution. And that's where there was a lot of joking about Curt Cignetti not looking very happy. He's yelling at players regularly when they're up by 40 points. He's screaming at Fernando Mendoza. They're in that red zone set in the first half to hand off the effing football. And it's little things like that. And this is also the case on defense where you really do want to have a live, experience executing at the level that IU is executing in this game, with the idea being that ultimately all of what we're trying to do if you're Indiana is put yourself in a position where you have the muscle memory of what exactly it is that you should be doing. And we've done it now on the field against an actual opponent. Yes, Indiana State's not good. And I saw a lot of people asking, why did they even schedule this game? Because I do believe that there is value in that repetition. There's value in doing things right against this level of competition because it's a greater level of competition in terms of a live action game than you would have just in practice. You've got fans, you've got elements, all of that. Yet it's one of those things where are you going to execute at quite that level when you go play Illinois or whomever? Probably not. But you now know what it's supposed to feel like when you're doing things the right way. And
the thing about Cignetti yelling is it does make me wonder if you're a player, if you're a player, do you just want to play all tough teams? Because it seems like the worst time to be a player under Cignetti is to be winning 73-0 against Indiana State. Because you said, he's just up air. He's so a little bit of Knight reminds me of Knight, so detail focused of I want to coach the perfect game where it's almost I would hate being one of his players when you're up 40-0 because it's that's when he's really going to rip you for making one little mistake. We should just play Virginia 5 times because we're not going to get yelled at as much.
I don't know. I think you still do. This is one of the things. And again, I think what you see with guys like Cignetti, with guys like Nick Saban, when you think about, we have a lot of fans who draw parallels to Bob Knight. There's parallels there too, because you'd see Bob Knight yelling at players in blowout games, because it's really about the execution. It's about, here's what we drew up, here's where everybody is supposed to be, and you need to be executing at a high level regardless of who you're playing and when you're playing them. And that message might seem, I think, to the average fan or the average journalist who's covering, it's like, God, these people are just focused on perfection. And it's like, it's really about being focused on execution.
Right.
And and that becomes so important in tough games. And if you look at what happened with IU last year, they did a great job as the season progressed of executing against teams that weren't as good as they were. Although at this beginning of the season, I don't know that anybody would have said that Indiana was automatically better than most of the teams that they blew out. But they did struggle with execution against the very top teams that they played. I don't think anybody would debate that. These types of games matter. And you brought up a great point. It's like, you just don't see a lot of games in Indiana history where they've won, they've scored 70 points, they've had these big of blowouts. It's a new thing for a lot of IU fans.
Right.
We've had games like this where Indiana's won, but it's kind of felt like, well, they kind of scraped along a little bit in the game. It wasn't like they blew them out as much as you would hope that they
I thought you were
would.
going to say we've had these games where we're on the other side.
Well, we have. No, that is another good point. But, it's like, even when you go back to the last time Indiana played Indiana State, which was 2 years ago, it feels like a lifetime ago. That was a 41-7 game. And I mean, Indiana looked okay offensively, but you compare that performance to what Indiana did in this game, and it just feels night and day. This felt clinical in so many ways. And yes, Indiana has significantly better athletes than Indiana State, but Indiana's had better athletes than Indiana State for a long time. They rarely do this. And so I'm not going to sit here and say this demonstrates that Indiana's a great team. I do like the fact that Indiana continued to execute pretty much through the entire game, regardless of what personnel sets were out there.
I do have one question for you. So I watched up until like the mid third quarter. We had stuff going on, so I watched some of it this morning. The two things. First off, the point and the question. It was what you also want to get out of here is with no injuries, and you saw the early concussion protocol for Surratt. He comes back in, but then there was the play in the third where BB hurt his knee. Do you? I didn't watch the rest of the fourth quarter. Kind of skimmed through it. Do we have an update on BB?
We don't, and
Okay.
we probably won't until Monday.
Okay.
That was, the injuries were a bit of a concern, and this was one, like you said, Surratt ends up leaving the field, and I watched him walk off, and I was like, that doesn't look good. And then he came right back, which was great.
But he didn't get another catch after that. Like, they really didn't target him after that.
I think they did once or twice on that drive.
Okay.
But even Omar Cooper, he had to leave the field late in the second quarter because he kind of got driven into the turf hard in the red zone. He left the field. He came back and immediately scored a touchdown. And then obviously BB, we don't know what the extent of that injury was. We heard in the post game it was a non-contact injury, which you don't like to hear because it did look like the leg may have buckled a bit. But at this point, I think obviously we just got to wait and see what's happening there. You hope, because Lee Beebe, that three-headed monster with him, Hemby, and Black is such a unique weapon to have. And there's really not you've got guys that kind of approximate Hemby and Kalon Black. You don't really have someone in the running back room that we're aware of right now that can approximate what Lee Beebe brings to the table. So hopefully he's all right. We'll have to just wait and see, but that was unfortunate. It was one of those things where it's like, you're going to have to run your guys. You want to get reps. You want to get people into games. So there was no reason why you shouldn't have had him in there, even up that much. I think it was relatively early in the third quarter that it happened. But no reports that we've heard up to this point about what's going on there.
Yeah, that's what you always hope that, so yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that one. But it's kind of a embarrassment of riches, but it is nice having the three guys back there because they're all slightly different, but they can all do similar things. And it's like you always are having a running back who's at 99 in video game terms, like at a 99 health, you're always have a fresh guy back there because you just keep swapping them in and out all the time.
I will say it was nice to see Kobe Martin get as much run as he got in the game yesterday. And, Martin, a redshirt freshman, he only played in 2 games last year and didn't do a whole lot. He rushes for over 100 yards in this game.
On only
Rushes
11 carries, averaging 9.5 yards, 9.9.
9.9 yards per
Yeah.
carry, 2 touchdowns. That was great to see. And, I mean, it's interesting because he got the lion's share of the carries. Kalen Black had 7 carries for 68 yards. Obviously, BB got injured and he had to leave. Roman Hemby actually didn't get that many reps, only 4 for 25, which is why when I go back to the Surratt thing, I just wonder if perhaps they're holding their top guys back a little bit because they wanted to get other players involved. Because even in the receiving front, it's like Holden Stays caught 2 balls, including his first touchdown catch as an Indiana Hoosier. Charlie Becker had that nice 31-yard reception. Brady had 2 touchdowns. EJ Williams caught 2 balls. So it may have just, even Mekhi Jackson, who we hadn't seen a whole lot of, got into the action. So I do wonder if maybe they were just spreading it all around the skill position players. Because, like, as much as Riley Nowotowski played a factor in the passing game and the running game last week, he didn't. I don't know if he got targeted, but he didn't catch a ball, nor did he take a handoff in this game. So this really did feel like, let's go to the full extent. Let's give Illinois perhaps a lot to think about as we switch personnel sets, because now over these last couple of games, everybody's gotten involved to some degree, and that's really nice to see.
Yeah, no, Surratt, because I think in game 1, he only got 1 reception. And then he had 3 today, but he has 15 for the year. So it's like all happening in the Kennesaw State. I mean, they're definitely holding back guys here or there. And what was nice for me was, if it would have been like I talked about at the beginning, if it would have been another game that was just really vanilla playbook, you're kind of like, man, you're really holding your cards tight. Like, this was kind of nice to show a little bit something different. And it's like, all right, I think there's a lot more that we haven't seen, but this was just kind of flashing, a little bit of ankle, so to speak, like just pulling the dress up a little bit, showing some ankle. It's like, no, we're not going to run a, huddle set every time. We still have some RPO. And, when we're executing, we're going to look as dynamic as we did last year.
Yeah. It's,
and it fires me up going into Illinois, because it makes me think there's a lot that, and I mean, you said it well, like, I think Illinois has got a lot to think about, because if you're Illinois looking at this, it's like, man, what does Indiana have they haven't shown yet? Like, how are they going to run? Are they going to run fast? Are they going to run slow? Like, what are they going to do?
Well, not just that, but what do we focus on what they've shown?
Right.
Are you going to double Omar Cooper Jr.? Or does that mean leaving Surratt open? Are you going to try to play press coverage on them? And now you got EJ Williams over the middle. You've got Riley. There's
or do you need to stack the box? So they're going to run Hemby up the middle. Like, are they going to push Hemby and run a little bit more than normal?
And look, to perhaps short circuit what I'm sure will be some level of questioning. Yes, all of this accrual of statistics and all these plays they've run have been against significantly lesser competition than Illinois. But you still got to account for that. And we won't really know until we get about a quarter and a half into the game what the physicality between these two teams is going to be. We don't really know how Indiana's offensive line is going to perform against a Big Ten caliber defensive line, or how Indiana's defensive line is going to perform against the offensive line of Illinois. It was interesting. You look at the defensive statistics, and they were really spread out. I mean, 57 tackles on this team, and I think they had something like 21 guys make tackles. You know who didn't make a tackle yesterday?
Who?
Mikhail Kamara.
Yeah.
He had a pass defense. So like that I find fascinating. And there's guys, Anthony Chung made a tackle in this game. Jeff Utzinger made 2 tackles in this game. Just a huge spread out of what Indiana was doing defensively. And again, that's going to be helpful because you know who the primary people are going to be for IU. But it is fascinating watching a guy like Mario Landino work as well as he did. Picks up a sack, 1.5 tackles for loss. Isaiah Jones had a really good game, but it was like they spread the wealth a little bit. And that's what you want to do in games like this. And I just think the timing couldn't have been better. Like, we heard, like Rhett Lewis talked about, he wished that the games had been in reverse order so you could ramp up to play Old Dominion. And I think I said after that game, it's like, I'm glad they got that one out of their system. And then we're able to refine and fix things, hopefully, as they went through the next 2 weeks in advance of being able to not just play Illinois, but get an extra day off to prepare for Illinois. That's going to be, I think, a really fascinating thing to watch the outcome of as we move into this next week.
I mean, the defensive stuff, the team stats are what's impressive to me. And they smothered Indiana State. Indiana State had 5 total first downs. And some of those happened later. I mean, I think they were pushing 1 first down for maybe, I think, the entire first half. I mean, you are talking 77 total yards of offense on 51 plays for 1.5 yards per play. That's unbelievably impressive no matter what the level of play is. Because I mean, we saw it in the first game against Old Dominion. Like, teams can break stuff. Like, there can be defensive just lapses where guys can, get 40-yard chunks. Like, that happens with good teams and bad teams. So to hold a team under 100 yards, 5 first downs, I mean, it was just unbelievable domination. They never let up. They never had a mental break at any point in the game. And to me, that's what was most impressive with the defense. And the larger point with these games, like, yeah, you could look at like, all right, who they play? They didn't play anybody. They're supposed to win these games. Like, yeah, you're supposed to, and they did. But to me, they kind of showed what you need as best you can show against teams like this, where like the first game they came out and there was definitely some moments where they had lapses and the offense didn't look crisp. Game 2, not as many lapses on defense, looks a little tighter. You're starting to get some turnovers and the offense is looking more crisp. Now here, competition is getting a little bit worse, but like, you are unbelievably crisp and it looks like your defense is just locked in for the entire game. Like, they're tuning all the pieces that you need to tune to get ready. And that's, to me, it's really all you can ask for in games like this against the opponents they're playing.
Yeah, I think you squeeze as much as you can out of these experiences.
Right.
And this is a very different, I'm trying to think of how to put this, Scott. It's a very different place to be right now as an IU football observer than I think we've ever been before. Because, I mean, you would get these games occasionally.
Right.
But the whole idea of the first 3 games of the season just being a tune-up, as opposed to us checking to see if we actually have a good football team, it's a very different spot to be in. And so a lot of what I've been trying to do with all of what Indiana's done over these first 3 weeks is to really, instead of focusing on the results per se, is instead focus on what exactly it is that we're seeing on a play-by-play basis, position by position, player by player. It was interesting. One of the big stories that got buried in the shuffle with all of this was Khalil Benson, the right tackle, who won the right tackle position somewhat surprisingly in fall camp, ends up not starting at right tackle because of what we heard afterwards was a violation of team rules. We've heard through back channels it was a very minor thing, but there's a real, what it feels like, an effort to hold this team accountable to itself for how it's playing and performing and operating both on and off the field. And then the games are also an extension of that. And it's been interesting listening to Cignetti's rhetoric over the course of the post-game press conferences from the first 3 weeks. It was interesting hearing him talk this past week about how this was a real test for his team. And what he means by that is, as he talked about with some of the newcomers, there's supposed to be a championship mentality here. We need everybody on the same page. And you sometimes need games against lesser opponents, I think, to really hammer that into shape, because you need to be able to hold people to account for how they're playing, even when it's easy or, when it appears easy, with the idea that you have to play well and precisely when it's easy, because that's going to carry over to playing well and precisely when it's hard. So they didn't really get this last year to the same degree because it was clear the team was coalescing. The attitude shift has been interesting to watch. And this idea that we're holding ourselves to a standard, that is just historically not something we've had that often from a vibe perspective within Indiana football. It's just cool to watch. And obviously, the rest of the season has to be played. They've got 3 really tough games coming up in these next 3. Who knows if it'll actually play out, but that's how it feels as we go into this next stretch.
No, you're hitting dead on exactly what I'm feeling as well. I wish we disagreed more, but we don't. We don't. There's not a lot to dislike that. I think we suck against Indiana State. You go back to the last time we won like this against Indiana State, 73-35 in 2011, and I was 2013, Kevin Wilson's first year, I believe, third year.
Third year.
And I was there. I don't remember much of it, but it's like, you gave up 35 points, but those games would happen where you would score 50 or 60 points. You'd have these big wins. And exactly, the feel was always like, man, that was, the other team would just be so demonstrably worse. And like a couple of weird plays would happen where it's like, man, we got to touchdown, and then we get like a pick six and another touchdown. It's like, man, a lot of things happen where, and then like, it kind of just felt like this outlier. Like, that's just a weird game. We played a bad team. Like, all right. And then a lot of times it was like in that 2013 year, the next year we come back and lose to Navy. Again, a weird, tough scheduling where you're playing a wildly tough team to play. This just has the feel of a team that's like, they're tuning up for the big fight. Like, they are tuning up for the big game they know is coming next week. And I agree. I can't put it down like what it is, but I definitely feel as I watch this team, it doesn't feel like this is a one-off or just things broke our way or we played a really bad team. This feels like a team that's like, they understand they have bigger things to do. And this is a game where like, we've got to show that we can put together a really good dress rehearsal before the next big game. And that's what it felt like to me as I was watching it. It's like, we know we're better than this team, but let's go out there and really execute at a unbelievably high level.
Yeah. We'll take a quick break and come back and talk about some of the other items related to this game. And we'll catch up as well on some things to think about as we go into this upcoming week as Indiana takes on Illinois. There's a lot going on that we need to break down. So all of that coming up here in just a second. But first, as actually I've lost the promo, Scott. This is embarrassing. I can't play our own promo on this, but actually,
I can talk a little bit. No,
yeah, go ahead, please.
No, I was just giving you time to look through. So I know it's always hard to produce and talk at the same time. But no, when we come back, we'll be talking about some things in the broadcast. We'll take you behind the scenes of one of our very own being on the Big Ten Network and talking about things. And yeah. So we'll stop now for a promo.
Actually,
maybe not. I get to do a live promo. Listen to the assembly call.
Clearly, the promo is not firing. We're not going to go to it. So we're just going to blow straight through. No problem.
Okay, listen to the assembly call. It's a great show. They talk about IU basketball. We have a something happening on Kirkwood for Hoosier back, not hysteria, but the Hoosier kickoff. So check that out.
Yes, and also just check out the other shows on the Back Home Network as well. Yep. Big Red Carpet with Rhett Lewis will be back this upcoming Monday, breaking down everything that happened this week and taking a really deep look at what's going to be coming up next week with Indiana and Illinois. Be sure to check out Sideline Stories with Sydney Parrish and Trisha Whitaker, as they had a great interview with Scott Dolson, the Indiana athletic director. You can find all of these shows if you search Back Home Network on YouTube, or you can search each of the individual shows on Spotify. Again, the Back Home Network, your place to go for all things Indiana and related.
And a shout out to my boy Zion Brown, who's brought back the Right Up Meridian podcast. He's done now 2. Did just release one this week about the Indiana Fever, and I'll be hopping on with him in a couple weeks, talk a little more Pacers. So we got that as well.
It's delightful. We love it. All right. Well, Scott, let's keep going as we break down some other items you wanted to talk about. Just so I can address it head on. I ended up getting asked to do a hit on Big Ten Network during the game about the Bison, and that was a lot of fun. I apologize for blowing the joke at the end. I got too deep.
Let me ask. I'll get to that. I have a question about that.
But overall, a really good time. And I know you had some questions about it because I didn't tell anybody. I think I told a couple of people at the tailgate that it was going to happen, but I didn't really talk to anybody else about it. So go ahead, ask the questions. I'm happy to answer whatever you got.
Well, I think it's fun. I mean, this is your profession. You're in this world. You know a lot of the people in the Big Ten Network on the on-air side have either been in your program or you know them. You know that you've done the on-air stuff. I'm just curious, a little bit behind the scenes. What is that like preparing for that? So obviously, you're going to go on there. You're going to talk about the Bison, but it's give behind the curtain a little bit, because it is tough, because we do this and it's very free form. I wrote down I mean this in a nice way, you're an orator with no limits. Like you talk, but in this format, you can kind of go in that format. It's like, you just can't go on for 20 minutes. You probably have a minute and a half. And the question was very broad, like, give us the history of the Bison at IU. And I know you can't talk about it very long. What is that like? Like, how do you prepare for that? Are you getting told like you got to wrap it up in 15 seconds? Like, give us a little bit of like that side of things.
It's different for different people, but I think generally the way I approach it, I knew the 2 questions that they were going to ask in advance, at least the first 2. And because, I mean, essentially the way that this happened was the producer for the broadcast is actually an IU alum. Brian Carter has been with Big Ten Network for a long time, has done some great work there. And I've worked with him before on some things. And so they had reached out earlier in the week, probably because, I mean, it's Indiana State. I think by the time the interview happened, it was already 52-0.
Right.
So, as a producer in that kind of a game, you got to find some other things to sprinkle into the broadcast. And so I knew generally what the questions were. And I think the genesis of it was the ESPN article, which some of you have read, which I was quoted in extensively. JJ Post wrote that article, and Jeremy Gray, I think, got quoted in it. There were some others as well. So I already had kind of a stock answer because I've gotten asked about this a bunch.
Right.
As far as the timing, I've done enough live TV now that you have an internal clock when you're being interviewed about how long your answer should go. And you also, when you ask questions, which I have also done on live TV before, you generally are able to give some visual cues, eye cues, or things like that, slight changes in facial expression to try to kind of move someone along when they're getting to a point where they're talking too long. So for me, I knew generally what the points I wanted to hit. I wanted to get through the early points quick, and I wanted to get to kind of talking about the present day. And the goal was really to not take up too much time because no one wants to just hear somebody blathering on the sidelines for long periods of time during a game.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I mean, you could have hit our podcast. You could have done a promo. Like, no, I'm just kidding.
I actually thought about it. I was like, I started on my podcast, CrimsonCast, but I was like, what if the interview had sucked completely? Then I would have taken us all down. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, CrimsonCast. Find us on Spotify. Use promo code. You just go. The other question was the joke. So I'm just curious. That is something. This is like you and I have a really good repertoire. Like part of this is you on a live air situation, you try and like sell someone's joke, or you try to it's like you don't leave somebody hanging. I'm just curious. Were you given that beforehand? Like, did she tell you she was going to ask you that and give you the punchline? Like, if not, it felt like that definitely hung you. I looked at it as like, if they didn't tell you that, they're hanging you out to dry. Cause it's like, live TV, a lot of stuff's going on. You're probably thinking all this stuff. Like to try and think of what the answer to a joke is tough.
She did say before we started, she was going to throw me a small curveball, but then she also asked a third question. So there was nothing there. And I'm like, well, maybe I'm just supposed to answer this last one straight. But there was also, and this is not blaming her because I thought she did a good job overall.
Yeah.
But the problem I ran into there was I got really deep into answering those first couple of questions. And as you just said, you kind of get into this stream of consciousness where you're just trying to answer as earnestly, but also timing wise as quickly as you can. And it just didn't occur to me that she was trying to make a joke there, and it should have. And I should be better in those instances. So I'm glad at least she went ahead and finished the joke, and I was able to at least jump in there and at least acknowledge that I missed it. It was a little bit embarrassing in the moment, but I will say this. After you've done these a few times, and you've been, because live TV is a very odd thing when you're conscious of the fact you're on live TV. And this one was even weirder than normal because like they brought the lights over. We're actually on TV. It's not like you're just voiceovering the thing. So there was a lot going on that I was a little bit distracted by. So, but overall, you learn in those cases, sometimes stuff comes out of your mouth you're not expecting, or you say something that you shouldn't. And you just got to learn to laugh it off and move forward. And so it really ended up not being that bad.
No, it was fine. I viewed it as more just, knowing a little bit of the backside. Like it felt like you were hung out to dry. It's like, you really can't give somebody that and then expect, but it lets her have hit her own home run, so to speak, and do the joke. But I guess the Bison's a pretty easy one to do. But anyway.
Yeah, it was fine. And again, she did give me a little bit of a warning, just nothing about what she was going to do.
Yeah.
Whether it was going to be a joke or something else. So it's all good. No, it's fine.
I look forward to your hit next week on game day. Is that what's coming up next?
Yeah, we're slowly escalating. We'll hit big noon the next time they're here. We're just doing the whole great year for the brand. Is the idea. So
you and McAfee
that's right. I should have worn I really should have worn the CrimsonCast Bison shirt. That was a missed opportunity on my part. I apologize.
You look great. But it again shows how great having a mascot is. Like it's something to talk about in these situations. Like a lot of times during the game, I know you were there. I was watching it. A lot of they showed a lot of Hoosier on a surfboard doing the wave and like dressed up. It's like it just gives you something to talk about and come in and out from breaks with. So
yeah, it's good stuff. I would happily do the rubber chicken circuit, just giving Bison speeches. if anybody wants to hire me for that, like if I need to go to the Alumni Association and be like, hey, I'll just do a 30-minute Bison presentation. Maybe that becomes the ultimate rebranding. Is that's just all I do. Oh, I'll wear like a bison head even if they want me to. It's fine.
And you know the joke now. Like you have the punchline. You're ready to.
We're not letting that one get past us the next time. Let me tell you that. That's funny.
Did you get to stay on the sideline the rest of the game?
Yes. Well, so this is also I have many jobs, as I think people know, at IU, and so I occasionally will have to pop down there because Cream and Crimson Studios, which is this new production company that's been launched in partnership between the athletic department and the media school. So sometimes I'll be down there helping out or just giving advice on production stuff. Not that our production people need it; they're all amazing at what they do. But I it's not like I have to leave the field immediately when they interview me down there. So yeah, it's interesting. It's a very honestly, it's like I've also been down in the field suites, and I don't think people realize how good the seats are that they're in the stadium. Like there's a reason the seats are up there and not on the field. It's hard to see down there. Sounds like a first world problem, but while I was down there for about probably 6 minutes of game time, just waiting for when they were going to bring in the interview. And you got to watch the screen up on the Jumbotron because you really, unless the ball is all the way down in your end, which it was not, you can't really see anything. So
no, I've done a couple games on the sideline. I was in the suites last year, and you're 100% right. And it makes you wonder. Like I'm shocked there's not. I understand like you need to be talking to everybody and be there. I'm shocked there's not been a head coach who's like, I'm just going to go up in the booth. Like it's such a better view. I mean, you can see things so much more up there. It's like really, it's one of the few sports where the head coach has probably the worst view of anybody and probably doesn't really see what's happening.
Yeah, they asked, what was it? Ryan Day was asked why Matt Patricia was on the sideline as opposed to up in the booth. And it was just Matt Patricia's particular choice. He wanted to be down there. Yeah, it's interesting just kind of how that plays out. But there's advantages and disadvantages to both. There's also things you notice about the way players are moving and some of the different aspects of how guys are approaching plays in the game that you might not necessarily see from up high. So it's always good to go down there, but I honestly prefer watching it in my seats in the northwest corner. So anyway, as we head out of this and move into this upcoming week, I think it's appropriate to talk a little. We've got a full day of college football right now going on. The noon games just started about 30 minutes ago. And, Illinois, I think we need to talk about first. They are expected to win their game. They're playing a MAC opponent who's probably not going to be very good at all. You've got a lot of other games going on, but, very likely Illinois will win this game by a pretty significant margin. That will keep them
better. Like seriously, Illinois, get it done. Like be a top 10 team coming. I'd be so pissed if they lost that game.
I mean, they're a 27.5-point favorite at home. It's a night game, so the weather's going to be great. They're going to play Western Michigan, who's 0-2. I think they'll be fine. But, if they do win and, depending on if anybody in front of them loses, you're looking at a scenario where you're going to have a top 10 team coming into Bloomington for a night network game. This is an exciting thing. Indiana, I don't know if they go up in the polls too much, beating, Indiana State by the amount that they did, but maybe they do because you look ahead of them. South Florida could very possibly lose. A&M could very possibly lose. Tennessee could very possibly lose. It wouldn't be shocking to see a 3-0 Indiana above any of those teams. And so you could have a top 20 matchup with one team in the top 10. This is so exciting. And this is something I was talking with some folks about at the tail end of the game when it was well in hand. It's like how exciting that we've got a whole week of buildup, a game that's been sold out since mid-August, early August. This game sold out before every other one because everybody knew this game was going to be big. I think Indiana right now, if you look at FPI, which is of course the power poll that ESPN does, if you look at the way that the game is set up right now, Indiana is a 67% favorite to win the game, according to ESPN's matchup predictor, which uses FPI. Now, we'll see where that lands after Illinois plays today. It'll probably go back a little bit. But Indiana is going to be, at least according to the statistics, favored in this game against the top 10 opponent at home. There's going to be an expectation Indiana wins. The crowd is going to be electric. I got to say this. The crowd was not bad last night, all things considered. All the factors.
Right.
It was, Bloomington North, Bloomington South in high school football was going on across town. It was a 6:30 kick, so a lot of people from the northern part of the state just weren't able to make it. And I don't know what the final attendance was, but I was expecting it to be a lot worse. But the thing that really impressed me again was how much the student section showed up and was into the game from the beginning. That student section is going to be electric, like on fire in this Illinois game. And I cannot wait to feel the energy in that building again with a full day of buildup for a game with this level of importance, a game that if Indiana wins, launches them right back in to the college football playoff conversation, a place they probably should have never not been, but this would really solidify them being in that echelon. And that's a really exciting set of circumstances as you head into this week.
Completely agree. I mean, not to get too much farther ahead, but the next 3 games are just critical for IU football this season and really the trajectory of where we go, because and they're all unique challenges. You know, Illinois is a game at home. It's a top 10 team that maybe isn't quite a top 10 team, but I mean it's still a legitimate team, and it would be a win that you couldn't just wash away like they tried to do last year with Nebraska. It's like, oh, they suck now. It's like, no, this was everyone's darling. Like, this was their darling, and if you beat them, you can say you beat them. You know, the week after, you're playing a road game, the likes of which we really haven't won in quite some time, like a tough place, a team that's not ranked, but it's like Kinnick's never been a place we've won, but it's one of those places other teams have won. Like, that's a level to be up. And then obviously Oregon is like, if you can win a game like that on the road at a number 4 team in the country, that's a new level. But these are all levels of games where it's like beating the next level of boss in, you know, Super Mario Brothers or something, or Metroid or Mega Man or something. Like, it's
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Xanadu. Like, where are we going with this next?
And I'm really interested to see how Indiana does in this. You know, you don't want to, you know, going over in the next 3 is not something that's going to be awesome or look great on Indiana. I don't think that's going to happen. Right. But I'm with you. It all starts this game against Illinois. And I'm also fired up. Like, I'm already excited for it. It was nice to see the team kind of get themselves locked, feel like they're building to it. Yeah. But I'm with you. You know, the 7:30 kick is awesome because it gives everyone time to get set up, get tailgating, get a couple drinks in.
Let's set up, yes.
Yeah, and then, I mean, you know, a noon game, you could have, you know, issues with traffic, or, you know, 69 got backed up. Like, there shouldn't be any reason anyone's late for this game. Everyone's going to have time. The students should be well vibed up, so to speak, ready to rock and roll. It's, you know, it should be a perfect night. It's not going to be, as you had mentioned, way too hot. Like, everything is just lining up to be a great night. And this could be one of the most signature home wins we've had. I mean, the Michigan game last year was awesome. I mean, when's the last time we took on a top 10 team at home and really felt like we have a chance to win that game? I mean, this could be one of the most signature home wins we've had in our lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, it's the one thing about last year's schedule and the way it played out that just didn't completely come together for Indiana. Like, that should have been Nebraska last year, but Nebraska lost to Illinois. And then, you know, Washington was never going to be quite at that caliber. Michigan took a long time to get going, and Purdue was horrific. You know, it just, there was never really a point with any of the home games last year where Indiana got to say, we beat a really good team on our home turf. And you go back and look at the past seasons of Indiana football, and it just isn't something that Indiana regularly gets to do. I mean, they did it in 2020, which is part of the reason what made that season so special. But, you know, 2020, like a lot of the teams you assumed were special weren't. Like, Penn State was a huge win to start the year, and then Penn State wasn't very good for the whole rest of that year. You know, Michigan was kind of mid for most of that year. They didn't really get a chance to get a signature win.
Well, the asterisk was that people didn't get to be there. Like,
well, that one, and that's the other thing. Yeah. But even in seasons where there were people there, like the last time, you know, you look at, like, let's go back to 2023.
Well, real quick, 2021 is like they had the chance against Cincinnati and didn't get it done. They had the chance against Michigan State, didn't get it done.
You kind of jumped where I was going with that. It's fine. It's fine. But like, they played one ranked team at home in 2023. That was Ohio State, first game of the season, and they were uncompetitive. Ohio State didn't play well offensively, but Indiana was uncompetitive. In 2022, they played Michigan, who was ranked at home. They got blown out. They played Penn State at home, who was ranked. They got blown out. You mentioned Cincinnati in 21. They were competitive. They didn't get blown out against Cincinnati, but they lost that game. We all know the circumstances of it. Michigan State was ranked in the top 10 that year. They played them close and couldn't make it happen, and then got waxed by Ohio State. And one of the things we've always talked about, Scott, is it's felt like the DNA of IU has been when you're playing teams that are ranked in the top 10, whether or not they are legit top. I don't even know what legit top 10 means at this point. Illinois is a legit top 10 team because they're ranked there, is how I would put it. But you've had close games against ranked teams. You've had blowouts against ranked teams, but you've had essentially losses against even top 20 teams in Memorial Stadium for what feels like forever. And that would be so great to have that be another thing that Indiana is able to turn around and say, it doesn't matter what you're ranked, you're not going to come into Memorial Stadium and beat Indiana. And that's the expectation, I think, a minimum expectation, something we've talked about quite a bit when it comes to changing the mentality around IU football. And I think, this is where Curt Cignetti hasn't really made many comments on the crowd. He made some comments that first week, but they weren't pointed like they were last year. And I think in the back of his mind, he's like, I know the crowd is going to be there and show up and show out the way they did against Maryland, the way they did against Washington and Nebraska and Purdue. Like, that's going to be there this upcoming week. So the circumstances are awesome. I am fascinated to watch Memorial Stadium and see how it flexes its muscles in a game like this, when they can really make a big difference in terms of the vibe of the game, in terms of how Illinois feels. Indiana beat Illinois. Both teams were much worse back in 2023 in a home game. This is a totally different scenario for both programs. It's going to be a totally different scenario for the crowd, too, because I was there in the crowd that game. It was a fun game, but I think if you go back and look at the attendance figures for that game, I guess that was 2022. There were 44,357 people. There's going to be almost 10,000 more people in the stands for this game. The vibe change is going to be really fascinating to watch.
The other thing, too, that we've mentioned in the past is, like, we've beaten good teams. We've beaten ranked teams, but it oddly happens on the road. Like, I remember the game against Missouri in Kevin Wilson's era. We've played, like, Penn State and Ohio State good on the road, not at home. So we beat Michigan in 2020. They were ranked 23rd. As I can best tell, the last time we beat a ranked opponent at home, besides that game against Michigan, was in 1987 when we beat Ohio State, who was ranked 9th.
Ohio State, that's right, yeah.
And so, that was the only time we've ever beaten a top 10 team at home. This would be possibly the second time it's ever happened. And it's only the third time we've ever beaten a ranked team at home in, modern era, or since at least the 80s. It's been quite a while. There's just not a lot of opportunities for this to happen. So this is really special, but also really important. The historical significance, what this means, creating that moment for fans. It's all there. It's also kind of cool that it's against Illinois, a team that, not a rival, as we joked earlier, but like, we have some history with, like, there's been enough back and forth where it's like, this is a fun win versus, like a team like Rutgers, where we just don't have any real significance with. Like, we've always kind of had a little bit of something going on with Illinois. But just to go a little more micro to this season, when we talked to Jeremy Gray, he put it aptly that, this is Jeremy and Connor Onion, when I talked to him too, it's like, this is kind of a play-in game. Like, this is kind of a knockout game. Whoever loses this game is going to have a hard time getting to a Big Ten, to be at the top of the Big Ten, and also college football playoff, especially for Indiana, looming with games at Oregon and at Penn State. If those are your aspirations this year, this is a game you need to win. So it's not like the season's over, but I think that the very high-end aspirations for either of these teams gets a little bit, the road gets tighter if you don't have this win.
So I'm going to correct something that you just said a few minutes ago, which is you cited that Ohio State game in 87 as the last time Indiana beat a top 10 team at home. That game was on the road. That game was actually in Columbus in 87.
Oh, my bad. Thanks AI.
That's the thing. You can't trust AI with all these. I'm still paging through.
Yeah.
I believe.
That's why I just went to AI, because, like, you just start paging through. It's like there's just not a lot of options.
I believe, unless I'm wrong, the last time Indiana beat a top 10 opponent at home. And I will correct myself if I end up being wrong on this, but I believe it was 1967 when Purdue, who was third in the country, came in and lost to Indiana in the Old Oaken Bucket game. And that, of course, was the win that Indiana gets a three-way tie for the Big Ten title. They end up going to the Rose Bowl, obviously, that year. But I believe that was the last time that they beat a top 10 team at home. But we'll continue to research this.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm like looking at ChatGPT right now. It's like October 10th, 87, location, Memorial Stadium, Bloomington, Indiana. It's like just wrong.
Well, and again, that's why you don't trust ChatGPT all the time, folks. But
fair.
October 10th, 1987, that was definitely in Columbus. And they did beat Ohio State the following year by just a ridiculous margin, 41-7.
But this is the point. Like it takes so long to page through all of the seasons. There's just not a lot of examples of this happening. So it's huge. It's huge historically. But again, I go back to for this season, it's a massive game for this season because the trajectory of this season is really going to start right here.
And look, what it's going to take for Indiana in this game is a commitment to playing at a high level for the whole 60 minutes. This is Illinois is a tough team to peg because there is, I think, a decent amount of evidence, as we've talked about throughout the course of the preseason and then through the first couple of weeks of the regular season. There's evidence that Illinois may not be as good as their preseason projections made them out to be. And a lot of it has to do with going back and looking at the games they played last year and the way the results went, and the fact that a lot of the juice that they came into the season with was based upon the idea that they won 10 games, they had a bunch of guys coming back, and they beat South Carolina in a bowl game. And all of that made people look at Illinois and say, that's a team that is clearly going to be much better because they've got all these people coming back. And then they go beat Duke 45-19 last week. So I get all of that, but then you've got the flip side argument, which is, well, they really didn't play that well in a lot of those games last year. They almost lost to Purdue at home. They struggled with several other teams. They lost to Minnesota in the middle of the season, when they shouldn't have. Their offensive line does not grade out particularly well. Like, there's a bunch of little things about them that you can say, well, were they actually as good as people thought? But it doesn't matter because in college football, as we've learned with the SEC over the last couple of years, perception is reality.
Right.
With the polls. It will be hilarious and very on brand for commentators if Indiana comes in and wins this game handily to say, well, we overrated Illinois. Like, I can almost hear that in my brain. Like, well, Illinois wasn't that good after all. It just shows the Big Ten is weak, whatever.
Yeah, we're still going to keep Alabama ranked above Indiana. just to keep order.
Yeah, I will say, I don't know if this is a play-in game, as Connor noted. Here's why. Illinois, this is a big game. This is actually, I think you could argue, maybe a bigger game for Illinois than it is for Indiana because Illinois needs big wins. And here's the Illinois schedule the rest of the way. They have Western Michigan today, obviously. They're at Indiana. They have USC at home. I don't think that's going to count as a big win, like playoff level win, if they beat USC. They're at Purdue. They have Ohio State at home. Now, that would count as a big win. But, again, it seems unlikely that Illinois is going to beat Ohio State. At Washington, not a big win. Rutgers, Maryland, at Wisconsin, and Northwestern. That's the remaining Illinois schedule. You can make the argument like they've got 2 games on their schedule that they could really put up on the wall and say these are playoff caliber wins. One of them is at Indiana. The other one is at home against Ohio State. Indiana, if they were to somehow lose this game, still essentially has 3 cracks at what would be, or maybe 2, depending on how Iowa ends up metering out in this season. But they go to Iowa, they go to Oregon, they go to Penn State. Those are collectively tougher games than a lot of other teams are playing. So even if Indiana somehow loses this game, and it's possible they could lose the game, certainly, they've still got some makeup available as they move forward. It's still incredibly important for both. I think it may be slightly more important for Illinois because I just don't see the heft on their schedule the rest of the way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So, but I think Indiana should just go ahead and drive the stake into them right now. That's really the way that you should do it, and hopefully that's what we end up seeing here as we get this week going. So there'll be a lot to talk about, and we'll have more podcasts coming up on the Back Home Network throughout the course of the week. We may have a special podcast coming up on Friday. Keep an eye out for that. We'll have announcements and so forth. We'll put something up on the YouTube channel as well. Also, just wanted to congratulate our winner in the Colin Jost ticket giveaway. Allison, congratulations, longtime subscriber to the Back Home Network, the CrimsonCast Substack. And Allison ends up winning 2 complimentary tickets to Colin Jost, which will be this upcoming Sunday at the IU Auditorium. We hope to have more giveaways like this in the future. Thanks to all of you who participated. It was a lot of fun, and we hope Allison has a great time at the show.
Yeah, we're calling Colin to get more of his stuff.
Yeah. We'll get Scarlett out to the tailgate. Everything will be great. So
yeah, 2 tickets to Galen's tailgate. We'll get some SNL tickets. Yeah, we'll just start giving away stuff all over the place.
Amazing stuff. Anyway, all right, Scott, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I'm as we've just kind of reiterate, I've been excited for this game for a while now. And it's awesome that the next time we go to Memorial Stadium, it's going to be this game. I mean, the last time I remember kind of being this excited for a game on the schedule, oddly, was I think whatever Ben Chappell's senior year was.
Michigan.
Where we played Michigan. It was like the 4th game, and you looked at it, it's like, all right, Michigan's going to be undefeated. We're going to be undefeated. That was a Chappell, like a team that was kind of good the year before. And you're just like, that's going to be a fun game. And it turned out it was that if memory serves, that game went to overtime. It was like Denard Robinson. And he threw some crazy pass, and there was a ton of holding that was not called on Michigan. Shocking.
I know.
And we lost in overtime or like right before or like the end of the 4th quarter. But I remember Memorial Stadium being electric. It was awesome from the minute we started, and it feels like this is the last time I can remember that, where, last season had moments where it was awesome, but I didn't go into last season I wasn't in the summer months thinking of that game in Nebraska like that's going to be awesome. It's just like, oh, we'll probably lose that game. Like everything else has always kind of been where it sneaks up on you during the season. This is the one where I think everyone had this circled from the minute we left Notre Dame Stadium last year. And so that I'm excited that we're now here. Yeah. We get to go there, and it's going to be awesome.
So a couple of quick detail points. That game, I thought it went into overtime too. I just went back and checked. It didn't go into overtime.
So wait, my memory is like ChatGPT. They're both bad.
Right. Yes. Don't pay for the Scott Caulfield Plus version is all I can tell you folks, okay? Just stick with the freemium version. Indiana scored to tie it up at 35 with 1:15 left, and then Michigan drove down the field and scored with 17 seconds left. That game, Ben Chappell, bless his heart, was 45 for 64. He for 480 yards, 3 touchdowns and 1 interception.
Did we rush the ball at all? Were there any rushes?
Darius Willis, 18 carries, 59 yards. Whereas Denard Robinson in that game threw for 277 and ran for 217, accounted for 5 touchdowns.
I remember he was tough to get a hand on.
I mean, it was one of those games where a little bit of everything happened. And I remember clearly I had my season tickets were in the north end zone at that point. And it was like watching a video game. It was just back and forth.
But Michigan they were ranked like 24. I mean, that was not a
19th.
They see memory's not awful. I mean, that wasn't this. Like, again, the only other time I remember, and this is because I was young and stupid, like I remember in college when Ohio State came in ranked number 1 or 2, and you and I went to the game super early, like, the main ESPN crew was there. Like I caught a Snickers bar from Lynn Swan. Like I remember going to that game, but I was dumb. Like, oh, maybe we'll win because we have Antoine Randall. It's like, no, we're not. Like there's very few times I've been excited for a game this with an opponent this highly ranked too.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. It's just one of those games where it sounds cliche, but these are the games that you want in college football. These are the games that really, I think, build not just legend, but fandom.
Right.
If you win them, these are the environments and experiences that I have been, frankly, a bit jealous of all of these programs that get these opportunities to play in games like this over the course of time. And if you're an Ohio State fan, well, that's a bad example because you're always playing at noon. But if you're a Michigan fan, or if you're a Nebraska fan, or if you're a Michigan State fan for, decent parts of the last 15, 20 years, or a Wisconsin fan. You've gotten these kinds of opportunities to play in these kinds of games, and your team goes out and performs. And that's really the big thing. Like, you can get everybody hyped up, and we've seen sellout crowds for big games before, but everybody's always going home disappointed. And this is where, as great as last season was, and as many great memories as IU fans built, that's the base layer. This is how you start to build on top of that, is by succeeding in games and environments like you're going to see in Memorial Stadium.
Well, this guy, sorry, I know this is our last point. We're dragging on, but like this is also something you and I have talked about ad nauseum for years here. Is this is what Indiana football has just missed that Indiana basketball has. Is Indiana basketball has the game against Kentucky, has, tournament runs here and there sporadically, Big Ten wins, Big Ten titles, big game, the game against Michigan with Oladipo and Zeller. You have these moments where it's like, it's built up to it. That game against Michigan, it's like everyone remembers it, the almost Oladipo dunk, like the putback by Zeller, like that place was electric. The game against Kentucky, the Watford shot, like you have those moments, and that builds a tale for a program for years, where you get donors, you have fans that come back like that. For all the talk of, fans and sellouts, and we got to fill the stadium, it's like you have an opportunity at your feet right now if you're Indiana. Winning would be ideal, but you at least have to really compete and make it a great game. But, you win this game, you could really put a stamp, and it's like this is what creates sellouts in the future. This is what allows you to get donors. This allows you to have 3,000 extra season tickets sold every year. Like, it is moments like this. Like, it is here. And so that's where I'm excited, because I believe this team is ready and focused and is going to be able to do what they need to do. I think they're going to win. But like this kind of is the solution to all the problems you and I have been talking about for years. It's not slogans or let's talk about, or let's change the music here or there. Like it's wins like this. Like, this is what really can change the direction of a program.
It's why you play the games. It's why you go. It's why you buy tickets. You want stuff like this in your backyard, in your barn, or your stadium. You want to be part of this. And so I hope everybody that has tickets is excited and ready and is ready to bring it. I hope everybody that wants to get a ticket is able to get one. I think it's going to be a phenomenal atmosphere, a phenomenal experience. I'm really looking forward to it. So
Same.
We will be back later on this week on the Back Home Network with far more than just this in terms of previewing this game. Stick with us, as we'll be trying to cover all the angles. For Scott, I'm Galen. This is CrimsonCast. As always, we greatly appreciate you folks tuning in and chatting with us, as we are, we love doing this stuff, folks. We love talking with you folks about IU football, and we're really looking forward to Big Ten season starting. So we will catch up with you a little later on in the week. Again, for Scott, I'm Galen. This is CrimsonCast. We'll catch you folks on the flip side. Stay never daunted. So long, everybody.